And we're back. The Wells Fargo Pathbreakers Forum continues now with this panel discussion featuring the top women in technology. And here to introduce the panel is one of our presentation sponsors. He's from the law firm Alston & Bird, a member of the Joint Venture Board of Directors, Steve Heminger.
Thank you, Russ. Wow, what a program so far. So informative, insightful, a little provocative. And we are tremendously excited to be here and be allowed to be a part of this. But since I will not be able to take the podium towards the end of the day, I want to take this opportunity to thank Joint Venture Silicon Valley, and in particular Russ Hancock and his group, for putting on such a fantastic program so far. And I am sure that the rest of the day will even be more exciting and informative. It's also exciting to be allowed to introduce this particular portion of the program. First, I have the honor of introducing the unparalleled and distinguished group of top women leaders in the tech area. And second, because the panel of technology is very near and dear to my heart. I've been involved in it in 30 years in the Valley for dealing with all issues of the legal aspect of technology. I've seen the ups and downs. The other aspect of all of this is the fact that we are seeing here today the regionalism and the impact of big data. You saw Tim speaking about all the information on the web, and big data is, of course, an issue that we all are confronted with and what we need to do about it. Call back your attention where Russ pointed out that software is getting a tremendous amount of VC support and technology. You have to be a little careful about that and dig into the numbers, because software and analytics and the use of the big data falls into each of the categories. The group, the Joint Venture Silicon Valley group, had to figure out how to follow such a great talk by Tim O'Reilly and who it was that we could use to bring all of his ideas all together here. And of course, the answer was to look to the women leaders of America to help us here. Now, Silicon Valley said, well, we're talking about regionalism. We didn't want to limit it to just Silicon Valley leaders. So what we have here are the women leaders of America's top women in technology. And that's based upon Fortune's analysis, and we concur 100%. Of course, most of these are here in Silicon Valley, so perhaps it wasn't that great of a chance to integrate and bring everyone from America. With that prelude, it's my tremendous honor to introduce the first panelist, and that is Kara Swisher. She's of Wall Street Journal fame and also the co-host, of All Things D. There's not a trend she hasn't covered, and she does it with searing insight. Kara Swisher. The second is Google's Susan Wojcicki. She joined Google back in the last century. That was only about 12 years ago, okay? And has taken a chance on a company that was scarcely a year old. Today, she's responsible for the design and engineering of all of Google's advertising products. Our final panelist is Kim Palesi. She has been on the leading edge of technology here in the Valley ever since founding Marimba. She was also the founding product manager of Java when she was at Sun Microsystems. Today, she is chairing ClearStreet. And finally, the moderator who is going to challenge the group today is John Swartz. He's the tech team leader and editor at USA Today, working out of San Francisco. John, I think you're going to have a great time here, and we truly look forward to what everybody has to say. Thank you all.
Well, to start off, I said yes to this panel because these three are very opinionated, very smart, and I want a free-flowing conversation. We're not going to say, what do you think of topic A? Answer, answer, answer.
Well, we're really shy, actually.
Yeah, well, you're the shrinking, yeah, Violet.
Shrinking Violet.
Yeah, I know, Kara. But one admission I'm going to make is the longer I cover tech, the more it baffles me. It baffles me less and more all the time. And this week in particular, you see all the news swirling around Apple, Dell, etc. The lifespans of companies are shorter. People jump from job to job to job more frequently. And so what we're going to try to do is just throw out some topics, trends, and take it from there. And you guys feel free to argue with one another.
Okay.
We will.
And with me, you can tell me to shut up.
Okay.
Yeah, I expect you to. So
Shut
first,
up.
You asked the first question then.
No, you go
Okay.
ahead.
What's going on with Apple? Because everybody's probably going to ask about that. We keep hearing, oh, the innovation, oh, the stock price. I actually would like all three of you to answer that one question.
Okay. You mean what's going on?
But
Like,
I mean, what type of shape are they in? I mean, tell me the state
you
of
know,
Apple. I mean, are we all overreacting to?
Yes.
Okay, I agree.
Yes. I mean, I don't mean to be rude. I don't know how much Susan. I mean, besides Google, there's no one with a bigger cash hoard. It's like $14 trillion or some.
137 billion. Yeah.
I mean, really, that's a really sorry company.
They had a $13 billion profit in their stock.
You know,
was
they
hammered
sold.
too,
You know, they sell. I don't know, 80 million iPhones or
It's 48
tablets,
million in the last.
whatever. Just,
quarter.
and then everyone's like, oh, that's a disappointment, and you're like, wow, it's not. Now I think it's because the expectations have gotten so far ahead of themselves, and there is competition from Google, principally. I think probably the most considerable pressure coming from Google, but it's an expectations game, especially because after the death of Steve Jobs, because these are written like narratives, as if they're like, I don't know. I was watching Nashville last night, best show on the earth, but life is not like that. Life is not like that. I think they're very successful in what they do. Like any company, they have some challenges, and the magic unicornness of it is over because Steve Jobs died. But that's not.
We all like
necessarily
tidy narratives, though, right?
Right, exactly.
You
So
know.
I think Wall Street's reacting to the fact that they grow at a massive rate, considering how massive they are, and at some point. I think at one point, if they grow at this rate, they have to become a $3 trillion company, and so that's difficult. That's a difficult thing. So that's what it is. But the way they're growing at the size they are is so impressive. It's a hugely impressive feat. But they have challenges from principally Google, I would say.
I was going to say the biggest challenge is probably from you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I would sort of maybe broaden the question and just say, I mean, if you look at technology and look how quickly it's grown, like you said, it was really not that long ago that I joined Google when it first started, and you look at how much change we've had over the last 10, 15 years, it's been tremendous. And you look forward and you say, well, how much change are we going to have in the next 10 years? Is it going to be the same? Is it going to be less? Is it going to be more? Like, I'd argue it's going to be even more. It's going to be even faster. And all of our lives are going to be transformed. And so,
I'm going to throw something in. So I was talking
Sure.
to Maynard Webb yesterday, who's been everywhere. He's been around a long time, smart guy. And he told me he did a little analysis, and he found that the lifespan of a company back in the 1930s, S&P company, was about 75 years. By 2009, it was 15. So as you talk about the pace of things changing, there you go.
Well, so things are really fast. And so that's one of the things I feel in our role is that the market is always changing. And so whereas before you might be able to sort of kick back and say, oh, let's just see what happens. Like, every day there's a new player, there's a new trend. Every day you're like, oh, I haven't heard of that company, and everyone's like, really, you haven't heard of that company? They were started last month, and
then they're like, too late. Oh, that's over. Move
yeah,
on.
exactly. So I mean, I think we live in a time of extraordinary change. On the other hand, there are like lots of companies that are leaders. They have good technology, and I think the players that we have today are going to continue to innovate, and there are going to be new entrants, and we're all going to be trying to think what are the next things that are coming, and how do we work to create solutions there.
Okay.
Classic line is people always overestimate what's possible in 3 years and underestimate what's possible in 10, and that's happened again and again. I started out in AI back in the 80s here in the Valley.
That's
AI,
coming. That's going to be big, I hear.
I hear it's big. It's actually everywhere, but people pronounced it dead, and then it had to, rise from the ashes, and now because of computational power and because of devices and all sorts of other infrastructure improvements, AI is everywhere. But, the sort of the cycle of predictions of glory and doom is inevitable, and now that's happening with.
Except,
Apple.
I mean, remember when Microsoft was scary? Kim
Right.
does.
I
She was
do.
at Sun. Now
That's
they're
right.
not scary.
That's
I
right.
mean, not
Yeah.
at all, in fact, and they were for a very long time.
Yeah.
And they're almost, they're almost like a pet now. You feel bad for them. You want to, you know what I mean? You know,
I know. I almost kind of feel sorry for them at times. That
They're
sounds
like-
terrible, doesn't it?
I always joke with them. They're like thugs that are sort of friendly now after it's all over,
Yeah.
after the mafia career.
Remember
is
that
over.
whole kind of argument, like they're the final four, the four combatants: Amazon, Apple, Google, and Facebook.
That was Eric Schmidt who said that.
Oh, did he?
So he
Yeah, so
defined
it's
it.
self-serving. He just- okay.
Unusually, he left out Microsoft. What
Of
a
course,
shock.
and Microsoft, of course, shudders when they hear that. I mean, do you think that's a fair
I don't think they
assessment?
shudder.
Well, they whine.
I think they think Eric Schmidt's a jerk to them.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't-
Yeah. Well,
But I mean, in the case of Apple, like they're still making as huge strides that Android is making in terms of market share and size and everything else. Apple is still running away with the profits. It's running away with the web uses. It's running away with the thing. And so the question is, can they stay as innovative with the products and change them? Given how much Samsung, for example, is really coming on strong, Google is, Amazon is still in there. You'll see some things from Facebook. And so the question is, can they have that reality distortion field go on and on and on? And that's more difficult without a charismatic leader like
Right.
Steve Jobs.
What are the trends or the things that you see in tech that excite you? I mean, something that hasn't been reported on. I don't want to talk about big data as much as we hear about it, but I mean, is there something that's emerging or something that you could kind of share with us? Or
Well,
I bet Google would, yeah.
Google's building a time machine. I don't know if you know that.
Oh yeah. And we're also
I'm
working
excited
on
about
making
that.
people invisible.
Right, exactly. And here,
heard
the
of it.
invisible. Oh, don't you see it?
Well, you have people wandering around the streets with their Google Glass, right? I mean, the dog fooding concept.
Yeah.
Where's
I mean-
yours?
Where's mine?
You're too attractive
It
to wear
doesn't
them.
go with this ear thing right here. No, really. I mean, I think one of the things we have been thinking a little bit are, like what are some of the challenges of things that people have thought about for a long time but have never actually been able to accomplish? And we've been thinking of them in terms of moonshots and like how can we do something that's really not just incremental but something that would be really, really different. And so like the glasses are an example. We all have, like Kara has glasses right here.
we do.
We all look at
They don't do this,
but,
though.
but like if everyone here is wearing glasses, like why isn't there, like you should be able to go like this and you should be able to do interesting things and you should be able to get information while we're up here that's relevant and interesting to you. And so, that's something that we're working on right now.
I mean, the glasses are interesting. I went to the Google X party. That's the group that's doing these moonshots. The car, the most visible are the car and the glasses, but they're doing a bunch of other secretive things that they're ferreting away on. And it was interesting because the Christmas party that they had, everybody was wearing the Google glasses except me, and so they had a.
Well, why was that?
Well, I don't have a pair. I'm not buying.
Oh,
those
they weren't going
things.
to lend you one? Or?
No,
No.
I'm not wearing those. I want to. I want to.
What do they look
I'm
like?
married, but I want to date someday. So they're so. I always say, it's just.
See, this is the reason I want to do this panel because I knew she would just take
Yeah,
over.
but you know what I mean.
Seriously,
like,
seriously.
Walt calls them the never get laid glasses, but that's just different. Mossberg, but they're going to give it nicer, right? Right.
I'm going to tweet that later, actually. Yeah.
Anyway, so they were all wearing them, and it was a casino night. It was a casino cruise on the San Francisco Bay, and of course I'm like, you can't. What is Las Vegas going to do when all these Google people come in and start doing this? Anyway, I think the glasses are cool. I think the car is fantastic, actually. Many people make fun of the car. I think
Hey, how does it handle in rain or snow? Can it? Somebody told me somebody who used to work at Apple told me it has problems in rain. I just thought I'd throw that out and just put you on the spot.
I'm not
you
sure
can tell
that
me
would
to
be
shut
the
up.
best source.
Susan, you can tell me to shut up if you care for.
So I can't swear by how it performs in rain and snow, but I would think that like if you have a car, it needs to drive through rain. It's raining potentially today. No, I am hoping that we can get these out before my kids start driving. That's my personal goal.
So I've had a lot of caffeine, so I'm going to start throwing.
Let's have Kim.
I'm going to ask Kim a question. Do you guys actually tell me about the women in tech issue? Do you think that's overdone? I know what you're going to say, but I think I know what you're going to say.
Let
do you
Kim
think
go
but
first.
Kim,
Kim
what
was
do you
a
think? I mean, there are
pioneering
enough.
executive.
I hear both arguments. There aren't enough, but I actually see a lot of women at early stage startups, which I think is a really encouraging sign.
We're certainly seeing more women in the startup world and at tech companies. The problem is that we're not seeing enough technical women. And that's what I'm concerned about. For example, when I graduated, 84, 37% of computer science grads were women. Now it's something along the lines of 15%.
Right.
That's crazy. How could it be going down when we need more, many more engineers
how did that
and
happen,
scientists?
though? I mean,
Well, I think that it's a complex problem. I think it happens when girls are sort of an age 11, 12, 13. It doesn't seem cool anymore to be geeky or to be, good at math or science. So it's cultural. I think it's a role model issue. We don't have enough women techies who are out there, visible, because we just need more of them. So it's a problem that has several different roots, but it to me is the biggest concern, because
that's a huge concern with the administration. I mean, I did a panel with the Treasury Secretary, and he said one thing he just threw out and made sense was, if you watch role models on television shows or movies, how many engineers are there? There aren't really many.
Right.
They're cops, lawyers,
and almost no women in those roles. Yeah.
But in any case.
Well, Gina Davis does a lot of this research. Yeah. Everyone all knows, here knows about this, that, they look at movies and television for young kids, comic. I think she looks at animation stuff. And most of the women in it don't have jobs. That's the first thing. And they're always the secondary friend characters. And when you start to pay attention, you really see there's always one woman and all the guys kind of thing. And she's the sidekick kind of a character. And in the case of a lot of the women without jobs, very few of them have a good job, and very few have engineering or science jobs or math-related jobs, and it's always something much lighter. And I think it's a big issue. I think it's a massive issue, and there's some companies that are doing a great job, and Google happens to be one of them. But it's an important issue because, in general, not just because of women, but diversity. You can't, the tech industry is way far ahead of other industries. You can compare it to politics, you can compare it to other things, way far ahead. But it's still depressing to watch the boards of these companies, to watch where the senior executives are, to see where the VCs are and where they're investing in. And it's a quantum level of difference between women entrepreneurs. And there's all kinds of excuses. There's all kinds of saying why it doesn't happen. And I think it's because mostly people don't pick up their heads and pay attention who are running these companies. And so if you really spend a lot of time doing it, which they do at Google and several other companies, you have to really make an effort to do it. And that's what doesn't happen. And years ago, I wrote a piece called The Men and No Women of Facebook. And I literally just put the pictures up. And I said, let's look at this. Right. White guy, white guy, white guy, Indian guy, Chinese guy, white guy. You know what I mean? And that was it. That was the whole group of them. And then recently I did the boards of Web 2.0 companies. And the same thing. The boards, very few women, very little diversity. And in that case, and it was all the companies, especially the ones that are highly used by women, like the Pinterests of the world, and which are mostly primarily women consumers.
Right, exactly.
And
so one of the Andrew Mason, who I always call the delicate flower, because he's always hurt by things, like, oh, did you say that was mean about my stock being down? I'm like, I'm sorry, but it's like falling into the basement and lower if it could possibly fall. And so he's always like
I had
upset.
the same experience.
So I wrote that. Yeah. I wrote that about their board, and I'm like, here's a board that's all. He's since changed it a little bit, and he was like, well, it is a problem. What should I do about it? And I was like, what? Excuse me? I don't mean to be rude, but get yourself a woman on the board. And he's like, well, can you find me one? And I'm like, no. I'm like,
that sounds like a Mitt Romney moment, right?
Yeah, it was sort
He's
of
going
weird.
through his binder of board members.
It has to be changed. It just has to be changed.
Speaking of bad boards, Hewlett Packard, can I just throw that out there?
Not touching that one. Susan.
Kim.
Back to you, John.
Okay, it's not very good, okay? And if they can bitch and moan at me, I really don't care.
It's a trouble company. It's just a difficult company. It's huge. It's got so many businesses. It hasn't innovated in lots of them.
Split them off and start selling them.
Oh, really? That's really easy to do. Like, are you crazy?
Well, I said so. Well,
I mean, it's the same thing Microsoft faces. Exactly. There's so many businesses that they're in that it's, to be super focused is very, very hard. Right. It takes, I'm sure Susan's doing this at Google. They are now making a shift to mobile that I bet she's spending like 75 or more, even though all their bread is buttered in the search on the desktop, where they get all their money in order to make these cars, in order to make the glasses, in order to make the time machine. They still have to now move drastically in a different direction, and that takes a lot of leadership from the top, and that wasn't happening at Hewlett Packard, obviously.
I'll ask him a question about mobile and the influence of mobile and the ripple effect throughout other industries, like PC industry, et cetera. I know it's a broad question, but can you tell me, just those folks out there, how much bigger it's going to become, or how much more immersive it will be in our lives, and maybe kind of frame it that way?
Well, it's one of those, we've been talking about the impact of mobile for, well over a decade or two at this point, and it's one of those areas that's underhyped still, in my view. Okay. Still, a small percentage of the world has smartphones. That's changing rapidly. What's interesting, actually, is if you look at even on the lower income side, most people have smartphones. They don't have necessarily a computer, or desktop computer, or laptop, but they have a smartphone, and their lives are changing because of it. But that's still, when we look at the world population, we're talking maybe, a quarter, if that. And the applications that actually make use of mobile technology are just now starting to be, broadly available and change our lives on a daily basis. So, this is one of those areas that it's impossible to say that it's overhyped. We're just really at the beginning. We're also at the beginning of computation and software being a part of daily life in every way. And you go home, you still put a metal key in a lock and turn the lock. You look in your wallet, there's still pieces of plastic in there. So clearly, we haven't yet achieved, the potential of mobile in our daily lives.
I wonder about that. Like, you talk about the home. Actually, that's actually a nice segue to what might be possible in the home. And I think you guys are probably working on a few things like that.
I think kind of back to the point on mobile. Mobile, we're living right now in a period of just, one of probably the biggest revolution in computation that we'll see over the next, 10 to 20 years, which is moving to mobile devices. And if you look at any of the trends, they're all up and to the right and really, really sharply up. And so if you think about where that's going to go and how that's going to affect our lives and how that's going to affect all the different devices that we have. If I look 5 years ago, I used to have one computer in the home. And now if you look at all the smartphones that we have, all the tablets that we have, we've had this proliferation of different devices in the home. And they're getting smaller and smaller, and so you can do more and more interesting things, and they become more and more part of that integrated experience.
I start seeing people carrying 2 phones now. Like, they'll use their iPhone for the apps, and they'll use an Android to actually make phone calls. Actually, seriously, I'm starting. You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah, you are. But your friends do that. Most people pick one. Most people pick the country they're living in. Apple country.
I wasn't talking about people having multiple phones that they carry around with them.
No.
They just are going to have lots and lots of devices that they can choose from, and they're going to be able to. Actually, I was just commenting yesterday with someone who works in the movie industry about how kids now watch a lot of TV on their devices, and they actually feel like it's a more personal experience because they can get into bed, they can curl up, and then they can
Our kids do that while the big screen TV's on next to them. No, they are. They're watching something on a small screen, and then they're watching both of the same.
It's not just a kid's thing. It's everyone's behavior. They're not carrying. There's no more desktops. It's done. It's done. You can look at every statistic. It's done. Laptops are getting done. They're pretty much over. You really look at the statistics. Tablet growth is massive. These little tablets, the 2 that are terrific are the Nexus 7, which I don't love the Nexus 10, but I do love the Nexus 7. And the mini iPad are fantastic devices, and there'll be more of those coming. Those are 2 very good devices. But it's kind of like saying, what do you think of this electricity thing? How's it working out for you? You know what I mean? With mobile, it's the atmosphere. You know what I mean? That's what it is. That's what it's now. This, or it's the car. You better stop riding that horse of yours. This is it. Mobile is it. And then it will become mobile where it's ubiquitous, where everything's a screen, and then your mobile device reacts. It's Star Trek, and these geeks were right. That's really where we are.
But we kind of live in a bubble, don't you think, though?
No.
In Silicon Valley. But I'm thinking about the rest of the country.
Yes, they use go anywhere in the country.
I know, but we have so many devices. There's a reaching point where there's overload, where you just can't keep track of everything you're a member of.
Most people pick one in the rest of the country. They pick one, but people, if you go anywhere, they're using these mobile devices, whether it's an Android device or one of the Samsung, The Motorola HD is a nice one. There's a couple that are sort of medium big, but everyone is now, not especially young people, but everybody. I wouldn't just say it's a young person's thing.
And I don't think this is something specific to this area. I mean, these devices are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. They're becoming more and more accessible to pretty much everybody. And I mean, when you think about it, you pay this amount of money, a couple $100, maybe even less, and you get access to everything. You get access to all the books and the communication and address. I mean, it becomes everything for a small amount of money.
And what's interesting about it is, like, when you think about how it affects everything else, like networks, how it affects movies, how it affects ticketing, how it affects reservations and car rentals with, like, Uber, and it just goes on and on. The things they just go on and on and on. Diet, health. I just saw an EKG in an iPhone case. You know what I mean? Like, it's not diabetes. And what's interesting about it is that people, especially young people, and Susan and I have children around the same age, when you think about how they manipulate the iPads or the different tablets with the televisions, for example, for example, there's no more networks. There are no more there's not NBC, there's not CBS. To them, TV is Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Prime. That's TV, or Comcast On Demand. It's a whole different mindset of how you access things and what you use to access them. And so I think that it's so over that debating it is it's so over, and it's exactly where it's going. It is like debating whether we should have electricity or if candles will do.
I used to have this argument with our classic or old-time media reporter in New York.
Old-time, is that what you call them?
Yeah, well, yeah, a little bit.
Does he wear a handlebar mustache?
He does have a mustache. It is trimmed at the side, though. Right. But no, he was convinced that the networks are more like Snidely Whiplash. Yeah, he was convinced that the networks were as relevant or as powerful as ever. And I just, this argument went on for years. Anyway, I just want to share that with you.
When I got to the Journal in 1996, I think that's when I got to. I was at the Washington Post before that. I was told by the media reporters, who were the big cheeses at the Journal at the time, oh, you're covering CB radio. That's what they told me. And I said, well, this CB radio is going to run right over you, 10-4. You're done. And so it was really interesting. It was a really interesting mentality, but that's insane.
Okay.
I'm sure that didn't last very long.
What?
Your CB radio coverage.
No, it did. No, it did for a long time. And then when it was over, when the bust happened, when that 2000 bust happened, I had a Hollywood studio executive, high-ranking, said, oh, thank God that internet thing's over. I was like, okay. Now it's really going to kill you. Like, it was sort of like what Halloween, where Jason keeps coming back. You're a very attractive Jason, but still. Anyway.
Okay, so Facebook. There was was it the Pew report that mentioned that a lot of people have kind of gone on extended leave from that?
Facebook
fatigue. Yeah.
What do you think, Susan? Facebook.
What do I think of it? What do you think? Or you?
I'll tell you in a minute. I want to hear what you guys have to say.
What do I think about Facebook in general? People leaving Facebook? What's the question?
Yeah, I mean, it's just maybe the idea that when you post something there, people can have different interpretations of whether it's a photograph or whether you say something. Maybe you're just tired of doing it. It's work sometimes, like Farmville used to be. Seriously. But I just wonder about Facebook, because I go through these stages where I don't want to use it at all. I use Twitter a lot. Then I go back to Facebook, and then I don't miss it that much.
Yeah. You know, I think there's sort of there was a beginning. In the beginning, it was this exciting sort of new, crazy, wow, we can tell everybody about every minute of our day and what's going on in our lives, and we can share that to the world. And there was a sort of a newness about that. I think there's a fatigue around that constant updating. What I do see, however, is that businesses are actually getting value from Facebook. I talked to some of the biggest internet retailers out there, and what I hear is that they are able to get information and learn more about their customers through the interactions on social networks, not just Facebook. So I think we're just at the beginning. There was sort of, again, an overhyping of the potential on the commercial side of these social networks. I think we're just beginning now to tap into the true power of that. It's early days, but that to me is the sort of the untapped and untalked about area of social networks where a lot of the action is happening.
Especially in business. Especially in the business area with some of these business sites. We run our All Things D on Socialcast. I mean, really, or any of these tools are great. What's difficult about, I mean, there's two things. One is 1 billion people is a lot of people. again, the same thing like Apple's cache hoard. That's a lot of people using a facility. I think their biggest problem is that it's primarily still a desktop experience, and it's not as easily transformed to mobile as Google search is to mobile. And so that's the difficulty. They don't have a phone. They have a popular app, but it's still not owning a phone. It's not owning an operating system platform. It's not controlling the experience. And so they have a more difficult problem because they just barely were monetizing the desktop. They were just starting to really see some gains there. And then all of a sudden, the rug gets pulled out from under and said, now you have to monetize this tiny little screen where they have very little control, effective control the way the others do. And so I think that's their biggest problem. And, you know, and there is an element of constantly updating the whole thing. Sometimes Facebook, to me, feels like, you know, everyone has that closet full of crap. And you know there's valuable things in your closet of crap, but you just sort of, you look at it, you close the door again. And you know there's things in there you want to get out of it, but then you're like, oh, the closet of crap.
That's a great analogy.
You know what I mean? Like, but you know, but it's not
it
crap.
just reminded me of the closet when I was going through our closet today, too.
You know,
actually.
it's like there's stuff in there. You're like, I know there's the picture
there's
in
a buried
there.
treasure in there
there's
somewhere.
There's something in there.
Yeah.
I was just thinking this because I was looking, my dad was an Eagle Scout. And so I was looking for his card that I had, and it's in one of those closets of crap, and that's a valuable item to me, and I want to find it because I want to like write a piece on screw the Boy Scouts. I'm so pissed that my kids are not going to be in the Boy Scouts because of this situation there. And so, sorry, don't you agree? Good heavens. I always thought the Boy Scouts were about leadership, but whatever. So it's just like, I think that's their difficulty. And then, you know, again, they have pressure from the ever-present Google, which is hovering around everybody's business, you know, kind of thing. They're like let me just tell you, I love Susan, but I always call Google the Borg, and they're like moving around and they eat everything, and you know, and then they're sort of shocked. Like it wasn't you who said it, but another Google executive was like, "Why doesn't Facebook let us crawl?" And I'm like, "Are you crazy? You're going to eat them and then spit them out, and somehow you're going to make the money." Like something, like it's just why in the world would they let the Borg come to their planet and go? But she's really nice. She's really nice. Susan.
I mean, I would say the things that we're focused on, like when we think about the market and we think about what we're going to do next, we focus and look at greenfield opportunities. We spend time thinking about how can we do something that no one has ever done before. And I think we have a lot of examples of that. So one of the things that I've been excited about recently that we just have started working on is Google Now. And so Google Now is this tool. It's built into Android, and it tells you things before you ask them. And one of the things it does that's really useful for me is like I sometimes, because I have so much stuff going on, sometimes I'm late, and it actually tells you, like, you need to leave now. There's traffic, and the traffic is, like, you know, because I tend to round numbers to the 5, like, oh, you know, if it's 12 minutes, it's really, like, round down to 10. Yeah. And so, no, it'll tell me precisely. It takes 13 minutes to get there, and there is, you know, 7 minutes of traffic, and you need to leave now. And so things like that no one has ever done before but are really useful and can really change our life, those are the things I try to spend time on.
I know you'll think this is crazy, but I'll ask it anyway. Okay. Is Google kind of consider itself kind of a modern-day Bell Labs?
You know what, I have to say, the moonshot idea is a big idea. I happen to be married to a Google executive, and on one side I think it's amazing, some of the things they're doing. On the other, I'm terrified of them. You know what I mean? Like,
well, why are you terrified of them?
Because I think the power they're amassing is massive and very important, and they're really good. You know what I mean? They're not like Microsoft dominant. It's much more. It's more. I don't want to use the word insidious because that's not the right word because it's kind of an evil word.
Pervasive? Or?
Pervasiveness of the abilities to touch things. And so that's, you know, I had an argument with another Google executive about, they're like, well, Kara, why are you always calling us evil? And I'm like, well, I don't know who's going to be running Google in 20 years. Like who would have, you know, it's kind of an interesting thing. And so here's a company that's hugely innovative consistently, and they're still young. They're 10 years, they're just over 10 years old. All these companies are young, and I'm sort of glad that the Apples are there and the Amazons and Jeff Bezos, a very active, innovative CEO, is there. And so it's just a little frightening when one company does get to the useful pervasiveness that they are, because they are. Google Now is useful. It's super useful, but at the same time, what would prevent someday from Google going, you know what you really need now? You need to go to Target. And you're like, well, why do I need to go to Target? Well, we happen to have a deal with Target. You know what I mean? Like it could just, it could spin in a different way. That's all. That's all I'm saying. But they're good. They're so good. It's hard to. deny the goodness of it.
I mean, this is just, I look at it and I think this is just, like we were talking about beforehand, this is a market that is changing so fast. Every day there's a new competitor, every day there's a new player, someone's doing something different. There are lots and lots of ideas that no one has ever done before. And that should be encouraging to all of you, that, you know, there are going to be new companies that are going to be created, new ideas that no one has done. And I think, like, you know, it's up to us to keep innovating because other people are going to be innovating, and that's a challenge for all of us.
You know, I was remiss in reading audience questions on the wall, but there was one that I kind of liked, and I paraphrase it. Basically, the question was: is Silicon Valley a region, a country in and of itself, or a state of mind?
I would say it's a region and it's a state of mind at the same time. I go around the world. I talk to lots of other would-be entrepreneurs and city planners and leaders, and they all want to recreate Silicon Valley here. And the challenge is, I think, twofold. One is you've got to have, there's a generation of entrepreneurs who have to exist, who then birth the next generation of entrepreneurs. So there's a you know, a timetable that doesn't happen. You can't have that, you know, create Silicon Valley overnight. Second issue, big one, is failure. And that's, you know, the one differentiation about this region, I think, from any other region in the world, and that's the state of mind. It's okay to fail and use your learnings to start another company, come back better than ever. And we've seen the best, most successful entrepreneurs in the Valley fail and come back. And
that's always been that's always been ingrained in the culture too from the beginning, right?
Exactly.
Taking a risk, whether it works or not, and if it doesn't, go to the next thing.
That is something that you can't just plant on top of another region or country. And you know, it comes from entrepreneurs failing, succeeding, doing it again, failing, succeeding. There's policy also, the policies that can help, you know, spur growth of startups. But to me, the answer to the question is yes, we're a physical region, but we're also a state of mind and a way of building businesses that is different from anywhere else in the world.
So I grew up here. I lived here most of my life. And I mean, I would also say that Silicon Valley is a network. I mean, it's partially a state of mind, like Kim talked about, but it's also a network in the sense that you have all the ingredients here that it takes to make a successful company. You have Stanford that's generating lots of great students with engineering backgrounds or other kinds of backgrounds that are relevant. You have the venture. You have the other people who have started companies who can give advice. You have all the other companies that can do deals with each other. So we have Kara who reports on all of us. And so I think it's a network, and it's the magic comes from having them all together in this small little place.
There's an analog element to every major industry. Hollywood is still important to be there in Los Angeles. There's an analog element to a lot of things, and you can't replicate it. You know, I think of Silicon Valley as like a hugely rich, dysfunctional high school. You know what I mean? With like all these different people who are in status kind of situation. You know,
a lot of cliques. Yeah.
And it's not just that. They like being together. There's a camaraderie and a rivalry and a you know.
So who's in the stoner group?
I know exactly who I would say, but one of the things I'm not going to.
I know. You have the last word.
No, but my point is that it's really important. That's a really important thing, a community of people, and you cannot discount that in an analog setting. And what's important about that is that these people know each other, they trust each other, and they move from thing to thing to thing. And that's where, you know, you're not. And the other part about it is every one of these technology companies, and you have to keep this in mind, their founders are still running the companies. It's like the car companies are not run by the founders. Hollywood aren't run by the founders. Technology right now is in its earliest stages because the founders are living and running these companies. It creates a whole nother level of success because these people are almost religious about their companies. They are, because they're the founders. And so
they're part of their DNA.
That's why technology is top in the world in this. That's why we compete, because our founders are running the companies. And that makes a huge difference in terms of innovation, in terms of the group and everything. That'll change in 30, 40 years. But right now, you know, Larry Ellison is still running Oracle, you know, kind of thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, how about it? This has been a very interesting discussion.
Good. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan Wojcicki. Thank you, Kara Swisher.
Thank you.
And thank you, Kim Polese. John, terrific moderator. We really
and
appreciate
also,
it.
she is really nice, really.
I think they're all
She's
great.
really nice, too.
Yeah.
But I'm not scared of her. Anyway.
Maybe you should be.
Ladies and gentlemen, direct your attention to the far stage.